Master and Man by Tolstoy. Chapter 4. The yard Vasily Andreich had driven into belonged to one of the richest families in the village. They held 5 allotments of land and rented more besides. They kept 6 horses, 3 cows, 2 yearling heifers, and some 20 sheep. 22 souls lived in that yard, 4 married sons, 6 grandchildren, one of whom Petrushka was married himself, 2 great-grandchildren, 3 orphans, and 4 daughters-in-law with their children. It was one of the rare households that had not yet split apart. But even here the quiet inner work of discord had begun, starting as it always does among the women, and it was bound to bring the family to a division before long. 2 sons worked in Moscow as water carriers, and one was in the army. At home just now were the old man, the old woman, the second son who ran the household, the eldest son, home from Moscow for the holiday, and all the women and children. Besides the family, there was also a guest, a neighbor who was a godfather in the family. Over the table in the hut hung a lamp with a shade above it, throwing bright light on the tea things below, on a bottle of vodka and plates of food, and on the brick walls, hung in the icon corner with icons and with pictures on either side of them. In the place of honor sat Vasily Andreich, wearing only his black sheepskin jacket now, sucking his frozen mustache, and looking around at the people and the hut with his bulging hawk's eyes. Besides Vasily Andreich, there sat at the table the bald, white-bearded old master of the house in a white homespun shirt. Next to him sat the son home from Moscow for the holiday, thick-backed and heavy-shouldered in a thin cotton shirt. Then another son, broad-shouldered too, the brother who ran the house, and then a lean, red-haired peasant, the neighbor. The men had had their vodka and a bite to eat and were just about to take tea. The samovar was already humming on the floor by the stove. Children could be seen up on the sleeping boards and on top of the stove. On a bunk sat a woman over a cradle. The old mistress of the house, her face creased in every direction with fine wrinkles that puckered even her lips, was waiting on Vasily Andreich. Just as Nikita came into the hut, she was filling a small tumbler of thick glass with vodka and offering it to her guest. "Don't say no, Vasily Andreich. You can't refuse. We must drink to the feast," she said. "Drink it up, dear." The sight and smell of the vodka, now of all times when he was frozen through and worn out, deeply unsettled Nikita. He frowned, shook the snow off his cap and kaftan, stood facing the icons, and as if seeing no one, crossed himself 3 times and bowed to the icons. Then he turned to the old master of the house and bowed, first to him, then to everyone at the table, then to the women standing by the stove, and saying, "A good holiday to you," he began taking off his things without looking at the table. "Well, you're frosted over good and proper, uncle," said the eldest brother, looking at Nikita's face, eyes, and beard, all crusted with snow. Nikita took off his kaftan, shook it out again, hung it by the stove, and came up to the table. They offered him vodka too. There was a moment of agonizing struggle. He very nearly took the little glass and tipped the fragrant bright liquid into his mouth. But he glanced at Vasily Andreich, remembered his vow, remembered the boots he had drunk away, remembered the cooper, remembered his boy, the one he had promised to buy a horse for by spring. And he sighed and refused. "I don't drink, thank you kindly," he said, frowning, and sat down on the bench by the second window. "How come?" said the eldest brother. "I don't drink, and that's all there is to it," said Nikita, not raising his eyes, squinting down at his thin mustache and beard, and thawing the icicles out of them. "It doesn't agree with him," said Vasily Andreich, chasing his vodka with a bite of a hard ring roll. "Well then, have some tea," said the kindly old woman. "You must be frozen through, dear heart. What are you women dawdling over that samovar for?" "It's ready," answered the young daughter-in-law. She flicked her apron over the samovar, which was boiling over under its lid, carried it with an effort to the table, lifted it, and set it down with a thump. Meanwhile, Vasily Andreich was telling how they had lost their way, how they had come back twice to this same village, how they had wandered and run into the drunken peasants. Their hosts marveled, explained where and why they had gone wrong, and who the drunks were that they had met, and told them how they ought to go. A little child could drive from here to Molchanovka. All you have to do is hit the turn off the high road. There's a bush you can see right there, and you didn't even get that far, said the neighbor. You'd do better to stay the night. The women will make up beds, the old woman urged. Set off in the morning. Nothing could be better, the old man agreed. Can't be done, brother. Business, said Vasily Andreich. Lose an hour and you won't make it up in a year, he added, remembering the grove and the merchants who might snatch the purchase away from him. We'll get there, won't we? He turned to Nikita. Nikita took a long time answering, as if absorbed in thawing out his beard and mustache. If only we don't lose our way again, he said gloomily. He was gloomy because he wanted vodka, wanted it with all his being, and the one thing that could put out that craving was tea, and no one had offered him tea yet. We only have to make the turn. From there we can't go wrong. It's for us the whole way to the place, said Vasily Andreich. It's your business, Vasily Andreich. If we're going, said Nikita, taking the glass of tea they handed him. We'll drink our tea, and then off we march. Nikita said nothing, only shook his head. He poured the tea carefully into a saucer and began warming his hands over the steam. His fingers swollen, as always, from work. Then he bit off a tiny piece of sugar, bowed to his hosts, said, "Your health," and drew in the warming liquid. If somebody would just see us to the turn, said Vasily Andreich. Well, that we can do, said the eldest son. Petrushka will harness up and take you as far as the turn. Then harness up, brother, and I'll thank you well for it. Oh, come now, dear, said the kindly old woman. We're glad with all our heart. Petrushka, go put the mare in, said the eldest brother. That we can do, said Petrushka, smiling, and snatching his cap from its nail, he ran off at once to harness. While the horse was being put in, the talk came back around to where it had left off, when Vasily Andreich drove up to the window. The old man had been complaining to his neighbor, the village elder, about his third son, who had sent him nothing for the holiday, though he had sent his wife a French shawl. The young folk are getting out of hand, the old man was saying. Out of hand is right, said the neighbor. There's no managing them. Too clever they've grown. Look at Damachkin. Went and broke his father's arm. All from too much brains, it seems. Nikita listened, studied their faces, and clearly would have liked to join the conversation too, but he was wholly taken up with his tea, and could only nod his head in approval. He drank glass after glass, and he grew warmer and more content. The talk went on a long time about one and the same thing, the harm that comes of dividing a household, and it was plainly no abstract discussion. It was about a division in this very house, a division demanded by the second son, who sat right there keeping a grim silence. Clearly this was the sore spot, and the question weighed on the whole family, but out of decency they would not thrash out their private business in front of strangers. At last, though, the old man could hold back no longer. With tears in his voice, he said that he would allow no division as long as he lived, that his house stood well, thank God, but divide it and they would all go begging through the world. Just like the Matveyevs, said the neighbor. A real house they had and they divided it, and now not one of them has a thing. And that's what you want for us, said the old man, turning to his son. The son answered nothing, and an awkward silence fell. It was broken by Petrushka, who had put in the horse, come back to the hut a few minutes before, and been smiling the whole while. There's a fable about that in Paulson, he said. A father gave his sons a broom to break. All at once they couldn't break it, but twig by twig it went easy. Same thing here, he said, grinning from ear to ear. It's ready, he added. Ready then, let's go, said Vasily Andreich. And about the dividing, grandfather, don't you give in. You built it all up and you're the master. Take it to the justice of the peace. He'll put things in order. The way he kicks against me, kicks and kicks. The old man kept on in his tearful voice. There's no getting along with him. It's like the devil himself has gotten into him. Nikita meanwhile had finished his 5th glass of tea, and still he did not turn it upside down but laid it on its side, hoping they would pour him a 6th. But there was no water left in the samovar. The mistress did not pour him another, and besides, Vasily Andreich was getting dressed. There was nothing to be done. Nikita got up too, put back into the sugar bowl the little lump of sugar he had nibbled around on every side, wiped his sweat-damp face with the skirt of his coat, and went to put on his caftan. Once dressed, he sighed heavily, thanked his hosts, said his goodbyes, and went out of the warm, bright room into the passage, dark and cold, roaring with the wind that tore through it, snow sifting in through the cracks of the shuttering doors, and from there, out into the dark yard. Petrushka stood in his sheepskin coat with his horse in the middle of the yard, smiling and reciting verses from Paulson. The storm, it wraps the sky in darkness, whirling snowy circles wild. Now it howls like some fierce beast, now it weeps like a little child. Nikita nodded his approval and sorted out the reins. The old man, seeing Vasily Andreich off, brought a lantern out into the passage to light his way. But the lantern blew out at once, and even out in the yard you could tell that the storm had risen higher still. Well, what weather, thought Vasily Andreich. Might be we won't make it through. But no, it can't be helped. Business. Besides, I'm all set now, and the host's horse is harnessed. We'll get there, God willing. The old master, too, thought they ought not to go, but he had already pressed them to stay, and they had not listened. There was no point in asking again. Maybe it's old age that makes me so fearful, and they'll get there all right, he thought, and at least we'll get to bed on time. No fuss. As for Petrushka, he never thought of danger at all. He knew the road and the whole countryside so well, and besides, the little verse about the whirling snow kept his spirits up, because it said exactly what was happening in the yard, and Nikita had no wish to go whatsoever, but he had long ago grown used to having no will of his own and serving others, so in the end no one stopped the travelers from leaving.